Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Raven. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us because we talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple and Spotify when you get there. Rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe, because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Mondays, it is not one right now. It is a Tuesday, but usually we are live on Monday at 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern time. It kind of depends exactly when we go live. But here's the thing. It shouldn't matter when we go live, because what you should do is go to the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, and then also hit that notification bell. Because if you do that, you'll be notified when we go live. And then we could go live at 3 a.m. and you'll know about it. And sometimes we do that. We have never done that. But if we did, you'd know about it. You could come hang out with us, come comment on the show. It's always a great time. We love going back and forth with everybody. So at Charlie_Burris, that's Zach T at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. Let's get down to brass tacks here over the weekend, Zach. Tennessee this baseball team's looking like a buzzsaw right now, which is pretty fun. How was the weekend for you, Zach?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I'm trying to thinking about that 3 a.m. thing that you're throwing out there. We have a 3-month-old, so I usually see the 3 a.m. hour. I could probably multitask to make that work.
There you go. Maybe 3 a.m. is our new start time.
Yeah, there you go. Should be a good audience.
Yeah.
It was a fun weekend, though. Fun weekend of baseball. Tennessee, like you said, kind of a buzzsaw. Did enough in some of those games early on where it kind of made us a little anxious for a minute. Then it was like, oh, they got this. Never mind. We forgot who they are for a second. And relatively low stress, but, the real stress begins this weekend, Super Regional. That's always tough time because it's the true. I mean, that's the way postseason baseball is meant to be played. A best of series, best of 3 in this case. Can't just beat a team one time. You got to go beat them twice to advance to Omaha. So it should be a fun time.
I'm really looking forward to it. First of all, the weather's supposed to be great. You got what I think is probably the better set of days, because with Super Regionals, it can be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or it can be Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Nobody likes playing on a Monday. And, well, obviously, in this case, it would mean that you lost one of your first 2 games. But beyond that, just the possibility of that, who's playing on a work day? That's lame. So you got sort of the days that at least I would prefer. I don't know how the team feels about it, but I also like maybe you're not taking so many days off. And obviously it pushes Evansville a little bit because they played an additional day and an additional game more than you did, or might have been 2 additional games more than
maybe. I know
one
it's
more.
At least one.
Yeah. And so just kind of advantages all around. But of course, we're going to talk about it all here in just a second. In addition to baseball on tonight's show, some fun news. Finally, some recruiting news for Tennessee football. It's just been this small smattering of stuff every now and again. Very quiet offseason for Tennessee so far. Everybody knock on wood to make sure that it stays that way. Or at least, if it's not going to be quiet, have it be like this news. Steve Wiltfong of wherever he's at now, on 3247 Sports. I'm not sure which one. I'm not here for the free advertising anyway. But he dropped a crystal ball for a very highly rated player for Tennessee football. We're going to talk about that too. And we'll get to it all right after I tell you about our great sponsor, Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. So plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Big thanks to them. As always, great longtime sponsor. Go get yourself a health plan. Okay, so Tennessee went into the Super Regional. As we said, it was just kind of workmanlike. They had moments where they got pushed. They were down for a second to Southern Miss, but overall, you smack around Northern Kentucky, you smack around Indiana. By the end of the game, you were smacking around Southern Miss, and you looked like I tweeted this. You looked every bit of the number one overall seed, especially in this year where there's not necessarily one standout team, and Tennessee is not that. I don't think, if this was that 2022 team, I think you would be thinking, well, this is a national championship period, far and away. I don't think Tennessee has separated itself like that. But they just look like probably the best team in the tournament right now. At worst, I would say as good as anybody, if not better. And at the same time, what we talked about last week is that number one overall curse, so to speak. Number one overall team hasn't won the national title since 1999 and all of that nonsense. I don't know exactly how you're feeling going forward, Zach, but how did you feel about how Tennessee looks at the moment?
Yeah, I mean they look fantastic. Like I said there in the open, we had a few moments where we thought, "Oh no, this could get dicey. This is the worst, nightmare scenario here." Letting a team hang around, kind of like that Indiana game where it's like, okay, you might need some more runs, and then they did score more runs. Indiana scored a little bit too, and then even in that game on Sunday against Southern Miss, it felt like at first, I don't know, it felt like it took them a second to get going, and then just like they've been doing all postseason from the SEC tournament on, they pile it on and they come through, and it's somebody different every single game. It feels like. I mean, obviously Christian Moore is going to show up. Blake Bird, like we know what they've done all season long. Billy Amick went through a cold streak pretty much from the beginning of May to until the SEC tournament. He came through with some big hits. Just up and down the order, though. Even Cal Stark and near the bottom. It's amazing how anyone in that lineup can hurt you. They all trust each other. The vibes, like we've said many times, are very good right now, and they just seem focused. Like it's so different from that 2022 team, which was such a fun team. The personalities on that team. It almost seemed like at times that's what stood out more. Drew Gilbert's firiness, Jordan Beck, his firiness, and some of the things he would do at times. Obviously, everything that happened during that season with like Vanderbilt and the famous Tony Vatello interview during the game about Jordan Beck, like all that stuff kind of comes to mind first with this team. And that's not to discount anything they did on the field. They played incredible baseball, just came up short against Notre Dame in the Super Regional. This team it feels like what they do on the field sticks out more than the personalities. And some of that's there, but that doesn't seem to be the main focus. That doesn't seem to be the narrative with this team. I don't think we've really talked that much this season about the whole villain thing. Hasn't really been that loud. It doesn't feel like, at least to me. It doesn't, not like it was in 2022 and even at times early in 2023 when you kind of still had some of that lingering behind from the previous season. That's what makes me think that this team can really go far in Omaha, that they have what it takes to win it all. I'm not saying they will, but I do believe they have everything required to go out there and win in Omaha. And then Chase Burns and Wake Forest, they're out of it. Chase Burns, we thought, was that one pitcher that you might run into that could create some issues. He got roughed up over the weekend, gave up a 3-run home run, 2-run home, whatever it was, to put Wake Forest in a hole that they couldn't ultimately climb out of. So you've got that out of the way. You have that storyline out of the way, which, I mean, I was pulling for the whole Wake Forest versus Tennessee in the Super Regional. They get Evansville, like we all predicted. I think you texted that yesterday. But that storyline had the potential to be a little bit distracting, and not saying that it would have distracted Tennessee, but it would have been the noise. And now it's Evansville. You got to go beat Evansville. That's all there is to it. I mean, they're not going to take Evansville lightly, obviously, but that's the only story there is. So there's no distractions. I think it's setting up nicely for them to be able to get through this Super Regional, hopefully pretty easy. You can never. We know Tennessee, the history of Tennessee athletics. When there's a Cinderella, involved and Tennessee runs into them, it doesn't always work out well for Tennessee. So Evansville going to the College World Series because they beat Tennessee in a super regional isn't something we can rule out, obviously. But I think if they played their game, they should be able to get past Evansville. They're a good team, but they're not going to have the bats to keep up with Tennessee, I don't think.
There's a lot of subverted expectations in this first weekend. It was a really fun first weekend for the NCAA tournament.
Tennessee and almost no one else in the SEC.
That's true. Arkansas bounced. And Vandy, I see Luman is in the comments. He says he was first on like button. We appreciate that, Luman. Also, sorry about your loss there. Vandy lost to High Point, and they are out. And I mean, you did have some other teams move on. Texas A&M moving on. Kentucky moving on. Kentucky looked solid. I will say after they kind of limped into the final part of the regular season. And they're outside of that, of course, Evansville. I mean, everyone was expecting Wake Forest, even though ECU was the number 1 seed, and ultimately ECU made it to the final. And just, man, what a painful road to hoe ECU has had. Is that 33 appearances in at least a regional and 0 College World Series, which is just brutal. But hey, sorry about you, I guess. I don't know. And so Evansville moves on, and the story on them, they have great bats. And they've broken a bunch of school records this season, and they run ruled 3 straight teams in their conference tournament, and they won the conference tournament in a close game. At the same time, they lost some series to teams that, couldn't even smell the SEC. And so they've lost, I think, 24 games overall. You look at it side by side. Are they an exciting upstart team that has a really awesome opportunity and they're going to be playing with absolutely nothing to lose, and that can be concerning? Yes. Is Tennessee the better team in essentially every single way? Yes. And that is just the way that it is. I mean, there is no excuse to lose this series. Not to get too serious about it and not to get negative at all about it, because it's awesome that Tennessee moved forward in the way that they did. But, there was no excuse to lose to Notre Dame in 22. Tennessee made it to the College World Series last year with an inferior team to the one that you're working with right here. And you're playing Evansville. I mean, this couldn't set up any better for you. I know a lot of people have been saying, oh, they're going to come in, play with absolutely nothing to lose. That's scary. Sure. You're playing in Lindsey Nelson Stadium. And, TNJR says Lindsey Nelson's going to be rocking this weekend. It's going to be a madhouse. It's going to be crazy. There's no excuse to lose this series, period. I don't want to strap down these dudes with expectations like that, but you better make the College World Series here. You're playing Evansville in a super regional. And with the number 1 overall team, like I like I said, I don't necessarily mean to go there, but there is zero excuse to lose this series. I don't know if you agree with that, Zach.
Yeah, well, I mean, baseball is baseball, and weird things happen. So it's not like I'm going to be on the mad at Tony Vatello if they somehow lose this super regional. But going back to Evansville and nothing to lose, like I don't really buy into that at all, because you get this far, you advance past the regional. I feel like all bets are off at that point. You're 2 games away from Omaha. I mean, that's no matter how many times you have or haven't been there before. For each team, that's such a unique achievement, and it's never ever just like a given. It with the 12-team playoff coming in football, it's like Georgia's going to be in the playoff until they're not, type thing. Like, we know that. We know Ohio State is probably going to be in there until they're not. Those are just kind of the teams that can punch their ticket in August, September, pretty much. That's just not that way in college baseball. No matter how good you are, I mean, the 2022 Tennessee team, the perfect example, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get there ever. You can never, ever assume that. I think that 2022 team there's some lessons that were learned there. And I know not a lot of guys are left from there, but Tony Vatello, the whole staff, I think they learned a lot, because that was their first time in that situation at leading a program, and they kind of learned what to do, what not to do, how to keep everybody even keeled, keep them focused. So I think the pressure is going to be on both sides, and I think obviously playing at home is a huge advantage. The crowd is in the comments there. It mentions Tien Jr. here. Lindsey Nelson's going to be rocking this weekend. It is. I mean, it's going to be the best atmosphere in college baseball, or one of the best. And that's going to be tough for Evansville. They probably haven't experienced many atmospheres like that. ECU's great. The atmosphere at ECU is great, but it's just kicked up a notch when it's in the super regional. And you're playing Tennessee. You're playing the home team twice, maybe 3 times. Whereas, in Greenville, you're playing other teams. So I think the pressure is going to be on both of them. And I think that's something Evansville's going to have to figure out how to manage, because I don't buy into they have nothing to lose. They have a trip to Omaha to lose, and that's what those kids want more than anything. So that I think the pressure goes both ways there.
I would agree with that. Volunteers in the comments. He says, "Let's go baseballs." We appreciate everybody for watching.
And one other thing I should mention about Evansville, their coach might be a little uneasy too, because anybody on their roster that's a freshman or a sophomore, they're going to be looking over at Tennessee, and they're going to know that Christian Moore's on the way, to MLB. You're going to have several guys, Blake Burke, different ones that are going to be gone after this year. There's going to be some spots to fill. Billy Amick also on the way out. Billy Amick is a perfect example. Tennessee played Clemson last season in postseason play, and Billy Amick looked across the field and was like, I like what's going on over there. And there he was starting at the hot corner for Tennessee all year. So there's going to be some scouting going on, I think, on Tennessee's side, and it would not shock me. I don't know if it'll be Evansville, but if somebody that Tennessee's run into in postseason play ends up on their roster next season.
Yeah, if they have some standout, and they definitely do have some really solid guys on this roster, absolutely. If you're Tony Vatello and you dispose of Evansville here, walk over there to that dugout, be like, "Hey, good job, boys," and then in there be like, "Let's talk after this. I'll give you a call." Let's be real. Let's be real about what is happening in college sports right now. That's 100% just the way that it works. And
if you're Tony Vitello and you go over to, I don't know, they have a good shortstop that's leading off, but you don't really need a shortstop. You got Antigua and whoever it is on Evansville, and you go over after the game, you're like, man, I really like your game. I love the way you play. I would, you're the type of guy that I would recruit and would love to coach. Is that tampering? Does that qualify as tampering? I mean,
if you phrase it that exact way, yeah, I'd love to coach a kid like you.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Have a good day.
Yeah,
no,
that's all.
Yeah, exactly. Just plant that seed. Just say, I'm all for it, and hey, even especially if they beat Tennessee, you need to be calling these kids, because clearly they're doing something special. I agree. Is the possibility out there that you could lose this? 100%. I didn't think you were going to lose to Notre Dame in 22, but we talked about it last week, and we've mentioned it some here already. The vibe is the right word. The vibe of this team, to me, just feels so much more. What is even the right word? Kind of calm and collected.
They're confident without any real arrogance. It feels like. I mean, it can be misinterpreted for arrogance, I guess. And in 2022, it was. But this doesn't feel like this. This feels like every other good college baseball team we've seen. Like these people there's a lot of people that are just checking into college baseball the last several years. I'm not, not singling out any Tennessee fans. I'm just talking about college baseball fans in general. The sport has grown significantly over the last several years, but the emotional part of it's always been there, at least for the last, 10, 15 years, maybe longer. You've seen a lot of that. So that was never unique to Tennessee, kind of the emotional part of it. It was just some of the villainous stuff, I guess, that they did. And it seems different. Like we said earlier, it seems different this year, where it's just this confidence where it's like, we know what we can do. We know we're good. We're going to keep doing what we do. Even when we're down, we're late in a game, somebody's going to come through. And usually they do.
Yeah, I think that 22 team, when you take into account pitching and the bats, they were probably, quote unquote, better. But I think, and maybe it's just the hopefulness in me saying this, but I think this team might be better suited to win a national championship.
It's almost like you trust them more, maybe? Would that be?
Exactly. Because there's not rogue elements like Drew Gilbert getting thrown out of a game. At least I don't think, unless something just pops off and something crazy happens, you don't have things like that that could just derail you completely. And your best dude is just, he's not getting up in anybody's face. He's confident and he knows how good he is, but he's not swag surfing around the bases or whatever the kids are doing these days, just flipping bats in people's faces. Like, it's just nothing like that. You just have arguably the best player in college baseball on your team right now. And he's unrelenting and inevitable. And then, as you said earlier, your entire lineup, like, you're getting this production from other guys. It's out of nowhere, just clutch stuff. Kavaris tears coming up, making huge plays way down in your lineup. And that's just how you win. That's how you win. And the pitching, to me, is good, but I would almost say good enough. I think it's good enough to win a national championship. And, I put this in the title. Tennessee's the odds-on favorite to win the national championship by a little margin. It's close with Texas A&M, actually, is the close second. Tennessee played Texas A&M in the SEC tournament, disposed of them, not necessarily easily, but did beat them. They played that one time this season. And so now you do have that expectation. I think you have that expectation of, like, oh, Tennessee got set up with this sweet little gig, just getting to play Evansville and the Super Regional. That must be nice to get to the College World Series. So there's a lot of expectation there, and it's going to be a lot of pressure. But I think when I look at it, this team is built for that. They're not the hotheads. They're not going to fly off the handle. They're not going to lose composure. And that's, to me, that's really encouraging. Will I say they're about to win a national championship? Hey, maybe. I think they are more than good enough. But if they can go and dispose of Evansville 2 games, save their pitching, make it look easy, which I also think is a very distinct possibility, as much, if not more so, than them, potentially losing. If they do that, I'm feeling really, really good going into the College World Series. I would put it that way. Really good.
Yeah, for sure. After the way they looked in the SEC tournament, the regional, I mean, they're playing exactly the way we wanted them to play, exactly what we said back in February and March. Don't worry too much about happens there. What happens during those months. Get hot at the right time. Get hot in the middle to late May, and that's exactly what they've done. I think it's definitely going to come down to the bats staying pretty hot. I mean, you can't just suddenly go cold. I don't think you're going to get to Omaha or win it all, winning games 3-2. I just don't think that's who Tennessee is. That's the one thing that could strike that would slow them down. I think is if the bats suddenly go ice cold, which is possible. I mean, that's baseball. You can have slumps and whole team slumps at once, and that can be the downfall of an entire team. Not that we expect that to happen. It's just I don't think you can afford for that to happen and expect to win games. Like I said, 3-2, 4-3, 2-1. I think you're more in that, like what we saw this weekend, 9-3, 12-6, those types of games.
Got some good comments here. Volunteer says Tony V always sent a message. Sent a message to that pitcher from Southern Miss, talking how they knew he was good and that they recruited him out of high school. I'm all for it. Bring in guys from Southern Miss. I do not care. Eric says, what's up, Charlie and Zach? I think Tennessee wins the College World Series. I love that confidence. I certainly hope so, and I think they are good enough. Jason asks, who do you think starts Friday? It's a good question.
Do they go the same route that they did in the regional? Was it Chris Stamos that started against Northern Kentucky? I mean, I think you would just stick with that and go.
Why not?
With AJ Kazi? Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You're pretty much certain that AJ Russell's not a possibility here.
Yeah.
And so I say just that already worked. You didn't lose in the regional. You haven't lost in a regional in, was it 4 years? Tennessee hasn't lost a regional game.
It was. Well, I mean, was it pre-COVID? Was that the last time then? I guess since they didn't play in 2020.
It'd have to be. Yeah. Man, what a tear
insane stuff Tony Vatello is doing, and it's become an annual thing now that people fire their coaches. South Carolina fired their coach. I've already seen some Arkansas fans. Everybody's going to be clamoring for Tony Vatello, and I don't see him leaving. I wrote about it this week, and I think we might have mentioned it before. The only way I ever could see him leaving Tennessee at this point is one, there's some drastic, change in leadership at Tennessee, which would impact every sport. If Danny White, something happens, that could change things. Otherwise, I think MLB, which is not realistic really, because that just never happens. I mean, I don't think a college coach has been hired as a manager since like the late 70s, early 80s.
Wow.
Pat Murphy's the coach of the manager of the Brewers now. He was a coach at Notre Dame and Arizona State, but he came back and was a bench coach in MLB for a long time and got promoted. So that wasn't straight out of college. You see some pitching coaches and stuff. MLB is just weird. They like to come up through the minors. Vitello never played. But all it takes is one rogue team trying to get creative, and hire somebody like that outside of the box. You see that in other sports every now and then, like the Lakers are about to hire JJ Redick to be their head coach, and he's never coached anything. So sometimes teams like to do that just to try something different. If somebody came for Tony Vitello in that regard, that could be tough to turn down. But Arkansas, I don't think he's going to go there just because he was an assistant there. He wouldn't even mention his alma mater by name during the TV interview the other day when he was talking about Missouri. So that doesn't seem. I think he's kind of got a little bit of like Josh Heupel, Oklahoma stuff going on with Missouri anyway, because he didn't get that job when the guy that they just had fired recently got it. He even made some comments earlier this year. So I think he's kind of got a little pettiness chip on his shoulder too, where it's like, oh, okay, you didn't want me, I'll show you. Like, yeah, you don't come after me now that I'm winning games.
It's got to feel weird to be in that spot, and almost a little insulting that there's so many fans of other fan bases that are just like, oh, I bet he'd leave Tennessee. I bet. Yeah. I mean, Tennessee, they haven't been good in the past. They were only good with Tony Vitello. I bet he would leave. Tony Vitello is getting everything you could want as a coach at Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee has resources out the wazoo. I saw some Arkansas fans saying like we have the biggest NIL check because with Calipari, all of this stuff came out that it was like the Tyson Foods guy and they got the Walmart family and all this stuff. And you're just like, you got nothing more than anybody else. Yeah, they might be richer, but overall, Tennessee is going to have just as much ability to pay Tony Vitello as anybody. And what's your motivation to leave there, to start over, to go from a team that's making the College World Series and winning conference championships to a team that's not? I mean, I don't, and they're both more than comparable. I mean, I would say overall Tennessee in terms of reputation, the city that it's in, and that sort of thing is probably more highly regarded than Arkansas.
Oh yeah.
Why would you leave here? Hey, anything can happen. Lord knows I didn't think John Calipari was going to be coaching in Fayetteville when the season ended this year. But yeah,
that's the other thing. Can you see Tony Vitello hanging out with John Calipari? Like they're not. Those vibes aren't there. No, not like they are with Rick Barnes and Josh Heupel.
But now what I could see, and actually I think South Carolina really should probably aim higher than this. They've won a national championship. They have a pretty powerful baseball program overall. Mm-hmm. They won a couple of national championships. What, I think back to back, didn't they?
What close to it? Late 2000s, early 2010s. Whit Merrifield was on one of those teams. Plays for the I can't remember where he's at now.
I mean, they have a proud baseball tradition, at least in recent times. And, I think they could shoot higher, but I would bet that the assistants for
Elander's kind of already been floated out there. Josh Elander a little bit. That, baseball's another one of those weird things where you'd seen the ECU coach kind of thrown out there, but he's been there forever. I feel like he's just kind of settled in Greenville, though it's not that far, I guess, to Columbia if he wanted to make that switch. But sometimes, Tennessee wasn't in that same stratosphere, but they had to go hire an assistant coach in Vatello whenever they went to make a change. So it wouldn't be total surprise if they had to hire an assistant coach like that. But that would be an odd move, I think, because you can't hiring the assistant of the successful coach just rarely seems to work out. You got to hire the guy that's kind of making a name for himself as an assistant. It doesn't, it's a weird dichotomy there. I don't know if Chasen Elander would be the right move for them. Not saying he'd be good or bad. This is Tony Vatello's program, and he's got to run his own program, and you can't hire him based off what Tony Vatello's done.
For sure. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I'm not losing any sleep over Vitello leaving Tennessee at the moment. So, Ricky Perry says, "F him, Vols by 100." Lordy, I hope so. I hope it's that easy. Roll into the College World Series, get your rest, be fresh. Man, it's a really exciting opportunity for Tennessee this weekend. The Lindsey Nelson Stadium is going to be a madhouse. I cannot wait. Friday at 3 p.m.
No one will be working after noon at the latest on Friday.
And then 11 a.m. on Saturday morning for some reason is the next game. I don't know who thought that up, but hey, Tennessee fans will be there. You know how it is.
No doubt.
But anything else with baseball before we move on to a little bit of football talk, Zach?
No, just don't blow it, Tony and the guys. Don't blow it. No pressure. Just don't blow it.
It really is that simple. I think I don't know. I don't want to speak anything into existence because I feel like as we've talked about so much, it is all about the vibes. Vibes are so high. I don't want to set anything off. Don't welcome. There's no way. Tennessee moving on, College World Series. It's a done deal. Let's go take it. All right, let's talk a little bit about Tennessee football here. Always nice. It's one of the lowest points of the offseason for football, but we got a little bit of news to talk about, but we'll get to that right after I tell you about the great folks at Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee we've been telling you about for a long time now. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to a $100 no danger first wager. If your bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $100. But there's even more good news with Zen Sports. They offer a one-of-a-kind VIP rewards program, and if you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, you name it. There's even sportsbook bonuses, and the VIP program is by invite only. If you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for VIP consideration, check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. What are you waiting for? Zen Sports offers true odds on all parlays, so get going and download their app at zensports.com today. That is Zen Sports. Betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. No danger. First wager limited to plus 500 odds to qualify. Boosted odds are derived from equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. It said I got to start a side gig as the end of a commercial quick read guy. Maybe I have a talent there that I didn't know I had. Zen Sports. Go download it. They're awesome. Been with us for a long time now. All right. So Tennessee football has had next to no news. You've had some here and there recruiting news this offseason. You had the Big Orange Caravan. Heupel had some quotes and some different things. Obviously, the spring game. But I don't think there was a ton to take away from spring football other than, that some player that will never see the field is going to be your starting running back or wide receiver or whatever always ends up happening in the spring game. But this is the type of news that you always want to hear. Steve Wiltfong, and I got this up. Steve Wiltfong's at on 3 now. So because he left 247, now he's on 3 now. He gave a crystal ball prediction for 5-star quarterback Faison Brandon to choose Tennessee. He's a 2026 5-star QB. So a little ways off, no doubt about it. But what would be insane if that happens, if he comes in 2026, is that Josh Heupel will have recruited and gotten onto the roster 3 5-star QBs in a row when you take into account George McIntyre and obviously Nico Iamaleava. they wouldn't, if he's 2026, they wouldn't all be on the roster at the same time unless
Well,
Nico stays for 4 years.
yeah, and Mertlinker's there too, which is a high 4-star
Yeah.
in the 2024 class.
And this, I always say it, you never know with recruits at all, but these recruiting analysts like Wilt Fong, they do not put these out lightly because they don't want to look stupid. They don't want to look dumb and have egg on their face like, oh, I put in that crystal ball prediction. This kid chose, freaking Alabama over Tennessee. There's usually something serious behind this, whether it's the kid has actually told them that or there's been some, maybe the kid has already made the video announcing the commitment. They know who they announced in the video. It's something like that. I have no idea if that's the case with Faison Brandon, but it is usually the case. You can read the tea leaves there that something like that has happened. What do you think about that, Zach?
Yeah, I wasn't totally shocked by this at all because Tennessee's been on Faison Brandon for a little while now, a couple of years. They got in on him before the hype really took off. I think he's the number 1 overall player in 2026 via
according to 247.
Yeah. So and that was a recent development. He was just, those 2026 guys, you start recruiting them in 2023 or whenever 2022, you start building those relationships early on. They're not rated at all. So Tennessee was in on him early. He's from Greensboro, same hometown as Hendon Hooker. So him and Hooker have linked up several times. He said Hooker's been talking to him about Tennessee since 2021, 2022, and they've met up at Neyland since Hooker's left. So that you got that going for you there. He can really tell you about this coaching staff or tell Brandon about this coaching staff and what it's like at Tennessee, unfiltered, everything, all the secrets. I think that's obviously huge. Then there's the fact that Georgia was believed to be a player for Faison Brandon, but they've already got a 2026 commitment from a quarterback, Jared Curtis, I believe, who was pretty highly rated himself. So Georgia's kind of out of there. It's kind of like when the guy, whoever the number 1 recruit in this past year's class or this current class is that committed to Bryce Underwood. Is that it? Maybe it went to LSU. Once they were out of that was the other school that George McIntyre was considering. It was kind of like, okay, well, it's got to be Tennessee by default now. It's going to be Alabama without Nick Saban. So everything's kind of breaking in Tennessee's favor there. And then these quarterbacks, they like to commit early because they want to help recruit the rest of the class. So you can say, oh, it's a 2026 guy. Well, he'll probably be committing, I'd say like December, January, if not before. I think he's mentioned, though, that he prefer to wait till after his season here. So that's not that far away. You're talking about 6 months for him to make up his mind. And if Tennessee's trending already, it's hard to see from here to December another team really coming in and overtaking that, especially if Nico really takes off in the offense this fall. I think if Nico has a pretty big year like we're all expecting, it's almost academic that you're probably going to get this guy in the boat because he's going to see, okay, it's not a one-hit wonder. Hendon Hooker did it in 2022. Joe Milton, who didn't play that well and has plenty of flaws in his game, was drafted, in the 6th round, but he was still drafted because he played in Tennessee's offense there and was the starter in 2023. It's huge. I mean, Josh Heupel's going out there and doing everything that we wanted him to do in 2021, everything that we questioned. Can you go out and land elite recruits? He's doing it on both sides of the ball. I mean, you've had some elite edge rushers, James Pierce, identifying him, Jordan Ross, some of these other guys, and then you're getting these quarterbacks in. You are supposed to be a quarterback guru. That's how everybody knows you, and you're following that up with helping you've already put 2 in the NFL, and you've only been there for 3 seasons, and you're landing these 5-star recruits. Like, that's what kind of moment. I mean, we've only been able to dream of this type of momentum over the last 10 to 15 years. You hope to get 1 quarterback like this, and Heupel's already got 2. Mertlinker's probably going to be pretty good. I think he's a really competitive guy. Doesn't really get a lot of press because he's not the 5-star guy, but who knows what happens down the road. The likelihood of all of these guys playing significant snaps for Tennessee isn't high because only 1 quarterback at a time can play. I mean, the portal's a thing. It's just like when Taven Jackson left and went to Indiana, he really didn't probably want to, but he really had no choice because you want to see playing time. But you don't even worry about that if you're a Tennessee fan because you're going to have a guy. And I'm sure they're already looking at 2027 guys, 2028 guys, who could possibly fit the bill too.
I think obviously Heupel system sells itself at this point, but if Nico pops off here in these next 2 years, the stream of 5-star quarterbacks should be endless until Heupel leaves, and it is before that ever happens. Even it's just
the only competition you have really, as far as reputation and development and quarterbacks, is on the West Coast in Lincoln Riley. That's the only guy that you can point to and be like, yeah, okay, Lincoln Riley can do it too. He's been doing it for really long. Well, not really longer than Heupel, because Heupel's doing it at Oklahoma with guys like Sam Bradford back in the day. But Lincoln's the one other guy that's going to put up a fight for some of these guys. But you don't overlap a ton, really, because you're outside of Nico. It seems like they're kind of sticking to the East Coast guys, though I'm sure they'll go wherever the talent is.
Yeah, that's always the bottom line. If you got to go to California and get yourself a Casey Clausen, hey, go and do that.
Or a Tyler Bray.
Or Tyler Bray. Yeah, oddly, had a few quarterbacks from California, but yeah, I mean it's clear at this point that Heupel for quarterbacks, for wide receivers, for running backs, now the defense is getting in on it too. He's going to put you in a position to succeed, get yourself some NFL potential, despite all the it's a gimmick system and you're still talent's talent, and you're going to make it to the NFL if you shine on Josh Heupel's team, and obviously that's super valuable. That said, this could be a similar situation, Nico, where there's some big fat NIL something going on, Lord knows, and in that case, maybe he turns around, much like Nico, and essentially gets to work after committing, as you kind of said there. You commit early, and this, yeah,
and McIntyre's done that too. He committed in January,
yes.
and he's driving in from Nashville every time they have a big weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you want to get this dude there and invest in somebody because you want to give the dudes that are going to commit later a vision of what they'll be playing with here. And you sold Nico in that way, where you said you're going to come in and your quarterback's going to be a bona fide 5-star dude, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country, and that's who you're going to play with. And I think it worked for a set of guys. It's not going to work for everybody. People like different schools. People got more money over here. It depends, but it can be an extremely valuable tool. And I'm excited to see what happens. Hopefully that commitment comes, sometime in the not too distant future. There was no indication from Will Fong when exactly it would be. But yeah, as I said, that usually carries weight. They don't make those predictions because they are just throwing, what's that phrase? Trying to nail Jello to a wall or whatever. No, there's some serious evidence behind this. And so, man, it would be exciting to have Nico at quarterback, McIntyre already in the boat, Jake Merklinger waiting in the wings, and a 5-star quarterback for 2026. I mean, what a setup, Lordy. That's just years of probable success stacking up for Tennessee. And that's really exciting. There's not much more than that because we only have what we have on this situation. But I'm excited. More evidence that Josh Heupel is doing things right in Tennessee. Billy Bob says it here in the comments. Josh put us back on the map. He really did. Got you back to 11 wins, and you're right there again.
You know what else is exciting is the fact that through his first 3 seasons at Tennessee, they've won 27 games, and he's done it with a couple of guys that the other person, like Virginia Tech, had kind of moved on from Hendon Hooker. Like, he transferred because he wasn't going to play. Joe Milton left Michigan because he wasn't going to be the guy and came to a program where he's had to fight to try to be the guy. Like, he hasn't had that 5-star dude like he's going to have in Nico this fall run his offense yet. And that's not to discount Hendon Hooker's talent. Obviously, we saw what he could do. Or even what Joe Milton did last season. Winning 9 games is something that's not been done at Tennessee very much in the last 20 years. And he is one of the only quarterbacks that managed to do that. Him, Josh Dobbs, and Hendon Hooker has been about it since the mid 2000s, since Eric Ainge left and since Fulmer's days are over. But Heupel hasn't had that elite number one overall potential, draft pick type of talent yet. And he's got several of those guys, on the way. We're going to see Nico this fall, McIntyre right after him, and Merklinker, however he fits in there into the equation as well. And we really haven't even seen what this offense can do with the players that Josh Heupel envisions in it. And that's going to start this fall and really into next season. That's what's really exciting. As good as it's been, it should be even better in the coming years.
Yeah. Oh. Exciting times. You got number one team in baseball. You got an Elite Eight basketball team. You got 5-star quarterbacks coming for your football team. An exciting future with a 5-star quarterback who's already on your roster. What a time to be alive.
Hopefully the Lady Vols can turn it around with a new coach.
Hopefully. Yeah, we'll see there. That's, I would say, as of right now, an exciting opportunity to return that program to greatness. We've talked about it on here, but I don't want to say I'm skeptical. I'm extremely hopeful, and I think the coach there is really exciting. But it's definitely one of those, I got to see it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna need some evidence first there. But hey, I think the possibility is certainly there. So, all right, Zach. Anything else before we bounce out of here?
No, I did see. I meant to actually text you this earlier, but I'll ask you now. I saw real quick a projected starting 5 for Tennessee basketball this fall. It was from 24/7 or On3, one of those national sites. They had the 3 of the transfers: Lanier, Akpara, and Dubar, starting with Ziegler and Meshack. What would you think of that?
It's a pretty solid roster. It's a little risky because you never know exactly how that many transfers are going to gel together. Yeah, I mean, you see that sometimes turn out disastrous where just a team is nothing but transfers and they just, they don't get along and the vibes aren't there, But I mean, in terms of talent and skill, that's top into the SEC right there. How will it truly translate? It's hard to say because you just don't know how 20 points in the SoCon is going to turn out in the SEC. That's just kind of the outlying factor there where you're not sure until you genuinely see it. Because Northern Colorado to Tennessee, that pipeline worked just fine for you. Howard to Tennessee, Northern Florida, right? North Florida for Lanier. Possibility is there, and they were coveted transfers. But we'll find out. It's not like you have known factors like Triple J. Anymore.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be December, January at the earliest when we really know what works for this team.
I just hope we have more moments like we had with Dalton last year, where you're playing early season games, and Lanier, Dubar, they do something, you're like, oh,
yeah,
like this dude's okay, like this. I see this guy's the real deal. I just hope we have some moments like that in those early season games because I agree. I do think it's gonna be a build up to the peak of that team. So we'll see. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. That's the show. That's the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in, watched, commented. We got Billy Bob, Tim, Eric, Ricky, Jason, Tian Jr., Lou Man, Volunteer, everybody. We couldn't thank you enough because we couldn't do this show without you. Quite literally, it wouldn't work. So we appreciate it. Thanks again. Go Vols, go win a super regional, make it to the College World Series. We should be talking about that about this time next week. And speaking of next week, we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.